Good morning, everyone. How are you? It's Hank Philippi Ryan. It is 11:30 on a day that begins with a T. This is Thursday, and I'm broadcasting First Chapter Fun right here on Instagram and here on Facebook. I hope you're here this morning. I hope you're having a great day. This is episode 63 of First Chapter Fun, if you can actually believe it. It's been so marvelous, and we have so many more first chapters to go. If this is your first time here, how many of you are first timers? Good morning, Carla on Facebook, and hello, Melanie, and the woman who walks. That's Deborah and Fuller Existence and Michelle on Facebook. I see your little live faces popping up, and that is very gratifying. Anyway, I'm Hank Philippi Ryan. We're here on First Chapter Fun, here on Instagram and here on Facebook, where Hannah Mary McKinnon, my partner in fictional crime, once I said my fictional partner in crime, but she's real, Hannah's real, read the first chapter of a wonderful new book. And today we are on first chapter number 63. Awesome. If you have missed any of those 63 first chapters, and some of you must have missed some of them, they're all on IGTV. They're all archived here on Instagram on IGTV or here on Facebook on our videos. So just click on whichever one you want to hear and spend 10 minutes or so hearing the first chapter of a wonderful new book read to me by Hannah Mary McKinnon, read to you by Hannah Mary McKinnon, or read to me by Hannah Mary McKinnon, and read to Hannah by me, and to all of you. We have great fun doing this. Our first chapter today is going to be from Dianne Freeman, if I can get this to work. Isn't this always the fun part of the day when I try to get the book cover to be not? Can you see that on Facebook? Oh, it's a toughie. Very high degree of difficulty. A Lady's Guide to Mischief and Murder. You'll have to trust me, Facebook people, that this is a cover. You see the Victorian clothing on it anyway, A Lady's Guide to Mischief and Murder, and we will be reading from that today. What's more fun than reading about the Victorian era and the mores and the conventions and the culture and the romance and the mayhem and the mischief and the society. And today, as you saw from the video we made, you are invited to a society wedding in the pages of Dianne Freeman's lovely book. So how are you, everybody? Hi, Glennie. Hi, Hannah. Oh, let me tell you the breaking news. Hannah Mary McKinnon's book, Sister Dear, has once again made the Canadian fiction bestseller list. That's 2 weeks in a row, and that is fabulous. You know, insider publishing stuff, and you know this, it's very difficult to make the bestseller list once. That is a huge milestone. But to make it twice, that means your book really has legs, and that means people are really loving it. I see Lucy Burdette has joined. Good morning, Lucy, on Instagram. We'll be reading her new book coming up in a couple of weeks. Very excited about that, The Key West Mysteries. And here is Dianne Freeman on Facebook. Yay, we're reading her book today, The Lady's Guide to Mischief and Murder. And you Facebook people, I am determined to get you to see this fabulous cover. So how are you all this morning? Good morning, Emily. Good morning, Joan. Hi, Daisy. Hi, Elizabeth, Beth, Grace, Andrea. I love this. This is so much fun. To see you here every day, every Tuesday and Thursday, days that begins with T. Every Tuesday and Thursday on days that begin with T, Hannah Mary McKinnon and I will read you the first chapter of a book. But you know that. Are any of you new, though? Are any of you here just for the first time? We hope we'll loop you in to our little community. I can tell you that I calculated last night that I have now made 91 dinners in a row at home. So I'm patting myself on the back for that. And I know you're all fighting the same battles and doing the same things. And that is one of the reasons that it's lovely to be here with you this morning. Yes, Jen says, after 63 episodes, it's like catching up with old friends and new friends. And Beth is saying, yay, Hannah, we are so proud of you for making the bestseller list with your Sister Dear again. So that is just great. It is a fantastic book. And actually, I read the first chapter of Sister Dear out loud here on First Chapter Fun. And if you missed it by some crazy reason, if you missed it, go back and go to the video archives on Facebook and IGTV here on Instagram, and you can catch up on that riveting, fabulous chapter. And I can promise you that you will not want to stop with one chapter. So welcome all of you. Welcome all of you. Keep those comments coming. Fuller Existence says, my very first time here. Yay, Drew. It was so much fun to hear your book the other day, Drew Murray, Broken Genius, a techno cyber thriller, which we really enjoyed. So go back and look for Drew's book as well. And I see Bonner Spring, whose book we will be reading in a couple of weeks. And Lynn is saying, I've been looking for Sister Dear and I can't find it in our stores. It's probably sold out already, right? It's probably sold out. I'm sure you can find it. I'm sure you can order it. Just tell that bookstore you want that book. And I'm also sure that Hannah Mary McKinnon can make that happen with one phone call to a bookstore. It's kind of the good news and bad news when people say they can't find your books in the store. You're like, oh no, they don't have the book. And then you think, wait, maybe they sold out. So that's the balance of being an author. Anyway, quickly, I know you're saying, let's hear the book, Hank. Okay, we'll hear the book. Let me tell you quickly before we do. I'm broadcasting here on Instagram and here live on Facebook, both live. And sometimes these platforms don't exactly love that we are broadcasting live. They just decide, Hannah and Hank, we're going to boot them. And it just crashes. It just crashes. And if that happens, and if I get booted, it's me, it's not you. So go get a cup of coffee or a cup of tea and come back in a few minutes and I will read the first chapter again just for you. You will not miss it. Grab a cup of coffee. I have today the Lyle Library. Do you know the Lyle Library in Illinois? It's fabulous and one of my favorite libraries to visit. I'll be going there virtually this year for the launch of my new book. Two Tired Book Mamas. Two Tired Book Mamas. That's so sweet and very evocative. Says this is your first time at First Chapter Fun. So we are welcoming you like crazy. Anyway, let's get to Dianne Freeman's book, A Lady's Guide to Mischief and Murder. I will hold it up yet again in a valiant attempt to get you to be able to see this on Facebook. There you go, a little bit. Dianne Freeman is the acclaimed author of the Countess of Harleigh Mystery series. She's an Agatha Award and Lefty Award winner, as well as a finalist for the prestigious Mary Higgins Clark Award, and that is a big deal. After 30 years of working in corporate accounting and finance, she has earned the right, she says, to do as she pleases. And these days, it pleases her to write full-time. Born and raised in Michigan, she and her husband split their time between Michigan and Arizona. So we are delighted that you are here today, this morning, Dianne, to read. Tracy says, yay, Lyle Library, yay. To read A Lady's Guide to Mischief and Murder, which we read the first part of the first chapter with the kind permission of Kensington Books and of the author. Yay, Kensington, they have such a wonderful list. Okay, let me see here. So without further ado, turn back the clocks, take yourself back to Victorian times. What would you be wearing? What would you be thinking? What would you be hoping back in Victorian times? And let's take you back to chapter 1, October 1899. This is A Lady's Guide to Mischief and Murder. Chapter 1, October 1899. Why does it always happen that just when I begin to feel that life simply couldn't get any better, fate drops a disaster in my path to prove me right? While I had no idea how common this phenomenon may be among people in general, it happens to me with rather exasperating frequency. For example, a little over 10 years ago, while I was merely Miss Frances Price, I married the man of my mother's dreams and became Frances, Countess of Harleigh. A joyous occasion. I'd done my family proud. My husband was dashing and handsome. I also learned too late he was also feckless and philandering. After making me miserable for 9 years, he had the audacity to die in the bed of his lover. Once I'd emerged from mourning, I found myself similarly buoyant and optimistic. That period also ended in death, or more precisely, murder. This cycle of highs and lows weighed on my mind because my life at the moment was purely idyllic, and I couldn't help but wonder if disaster loomed right around the corner. Regardless, I carried on as usual, taking breakfast in the nursery with my 8-year-old daughter Rose while we made plans for an upcoming visit to the country. When the time came for her lessons, I slipped downstairs in my library while Mrs. Thompson, my housekeeper, had left a pot of coffee next to the morning mail on my desk. And waxwings trilled out the window, looking out over the garden. While enjoying my first sip, I learned that was the moment fate would drop the other shoe. Aunt Hetty and my sister Lily slipped into the room, both looking far too distressed for such a fine morning. Lily was soon to be married, and she'd been floating through the past 2 months as the happiest of brides-to-be. But with her blue eyes red-rimmed and watery, her complexion blotchy, and her golden hair spilling from its coiffure, she looked rather like a ghoulish version of her usual sunny self. The first twinges of apprehension tickled the back of my neck like icy fingers. "Dearest, is something amiss?" She burst into tears. Hetty wrapped her arms around Lily and cast a scowl my way. "Now look what you've done." I must admit that exchange left me baffled and concerned. I swept around the desk and leaned over my sister. "Lily, please tell me what happened." As her tears continued to flow, Hetty settled her in a chair and gave me the news. Lily was with child. I reeled back against the desk and uttered the first word that came to mind. Disaster! This brought on renewed wailing and a fresh bout of tears from Lily and a peevish huff from Aunt Hetty. "Honestly, Frances, you are no help at all. Lily turns to you with her troubles, and this is your reaction?" I gave her a slow burning glare intended to make her cringe, or at least take her criticism elsewhere. It didn't work. Hetty was immune to glares, mine or anyone else's. As my father's sister, she shared his pragmatic nature, dark hair and eyes, and the uncanny ability to make money from anything. Hetty had survived the loss of a beloved husband, made and lost several fortunes, held her own with businessmen and society matrons alike. She was not to be intimidated by the likes of me. Instead, she sidled up to Lily and placed a protective arm around her shoulders, as if I were going to harm her in some way. For her part, Lily struggled to fight back her tears and mopped her eyes with a handkerchief. "Of course I'll help. You just took me by surprise." I glanced at my sister and sighed. "Your wedding is only 8 weeks away. Couldn't you have waited?" Lily, with the face of an innocent babe, raised her handkerchief to her watery eyes. "That's exactly the point, Franny. We saw no reason to wait." As she waved the handkerchief dismissively, Hetty drew back and took over her seat. "After all, we'll be married so soon. I had no idea it could happen this quickly. You and Reggie were married far some time before Rose came along. And Aunt Hetty was married for years and never had children. How should I have known?" "How should I have known" was not likely going to pass muster as an excuse to our mother. I could just imagine her reaction had I made such an announcement before my wedding. Though now I think about it, it wasn't as if there had been time. My mother had singled out Reggie as a possible husband for me before we even left New York. A mutual friend introduced us soon after we arrived in London. Reggie and I danced a few times, he and my mother came to terms, and we were married without ever having a chance to become acquainted. Have I mentioned my marriage was a disaster? Is it any wonder I wanted Lily and Leo to have a long engagement period, to take some time and come to know each other? Clearly, they came to know each other all too well. Now what were we to do? "Leo suggested we elope," Lily said, almost in a whisper. Her words pulled me from my thoughts. "Oh dear, no, that will never do." She balled the handkerchief in her fist. "Well, we can't wait 8 weeks as we planned. How on earth will I explain giving birth so soon? It will be less than 6 months. "You wouldn't be the first, dear." Hetty patted her hand. "No, you wouldn't, but if it can be avoided, so much the better. However, an elopement is almost a proclamation that one is with child. I agree the original wedding date is out of the question, but elopement is not a satisfactory alternative. So where did that leave us? Since Lily seemed to have recovered herself, I ventured to ask another tricky question. What does Leo's mother say? She gawked at me as if I just asked her to set herself on fire. Mrs. Kendrick says nothing, as she has absolutely no idea of our situation. Her voice had become a shriek. You cannot seriously think I'd tell her. Francis, I'd die first. She stared and clutched at her throat as if choking. I'd simply die. Well, we can't have that. But how do you intend to keep this from her? That was the point of the elopement. I was relieved to see Hetty narrow her eyes in confusion. Were you planning to elope and stay away for 9 months? Lily took a breath to speak, then stopped herself, sinking against the back of her chair. Father, I suppose we'd have to, wouldn't we? Leo couldn't do that, dear, not without giving his father a very good reason. Unless he can come up with a plausible lie, you will still have to tell the truth. Mr. Kendrick isn't likely to allow a 9-month wedding trip. Looking at Lily now, lost in her misery, I felt compelled to come up with a solution, as did Hetty, it seemed. Since she'd come here to support Lily, she must have known about her condition a bit longer than I. Have you any ideas, Aunt Hetty? She shook her head. I thought elopement was the best option. It's not a horrible option, but it should be considered only as the last resort. Surely we can think of something better. You're right, Hetty squared her jaw in determination. We are 3 intelligent women. What would we do if we had every possible option to hand? If only we could find a country house in which to hold a small family wedding, I said. Hetty cocked her head as she turned to me. Don't some families ever lease their homes? Not for such a short time. Hetty and Lily had only been living in London since April when Lily made her debut and still had much to learn about the ways of society. Aristocratic society, that is. One could lease one's manor out for a year or longer, and though everyone would know the family was having financial troubles, taking this step would seem like a sensible way out of these troubles. Renting one's family home out for a week, however, would give the appearance of running a hotel and would reek of middle-class business. It simply wasn't done. What about Leo's sister and her husband? I ran through a mental list of distance acquaintances' names. The Durants, if I remember correctly. I know they keep a house in town, but where is Mr. Durant's family seat? Lily wrinkled her nose. I'm not sure where they're from, but Leo would know better than I. Let me fetch him. She rose and crossed the room as if Leo were waiting just outside in the hall. She opened the door and reached out. Heavens, he was just outside in the hall. I cast a glance at Hetty, who shrugged. We all thought it was better if he waited while Lily gave you her news. Leo, usually friendly and gregarious, shuffled into the room, his head down. He darted nervous glances at me while Lily tugged him along behind her, a sight in itself. Leo was not a tall man, but he had a square, sturdy build, and Lily was so petite it looked as though she were guiding a repentant Goliath to a chair. Good. He couldn't be any more uncomfortable than I, and he'd been a party to bringing this situation upon us. I invited him to sit while I searched for the right words to begin. Hetty had no such problem. We've been discussing your situation, Mr. Kendrick, and Lady Harleigh seems to think an elopement might give rise to a great deal of gossip. Leo chewed on his lip while he studied me, his warm brown eyes wary. I rather think the gossip would be less vicious over an elopement than if we wait for the proper wedding date. Perhaps, I said, but not by much. Since the wedding invitations have not yet gone out, is it possible for you and Lily to change your venue and date somewhere in the country for a week or so, with only a family in attendance? He contemplated the idea, then blew out a breath. I can see the advantage to a quick, simple ceremony, but where exactly in the country do you intend the wedding to take place? Before I could comment, a knock sounded at the door, and Mrs. Thompson poked her gray head inside. Mr. Hazelton is here for you, milady. Is he? I couldn't stop the smile that slipped across my lips. No matter what problem bore down on me, just the thought of George Hazelton drove them from my mind. Must you see him now? Lily flashed me a look of impatience. I rose in my seat. Yes, I must. He's on his way to Risings, so he won't be here for long, dear. Besides, you and Leo have a great deal of planning to do. I shot her a warning look as I followed Mrs. Thompson out. Don't you dare leave before I get back. The second I stepped through the drawing room door, George pulled me into his arms. I made no protest. On the contrary, I thoroughly approved of his actions. George Hazelton and I were to be wed, though we kept that lovely secret to ourselves so as not to steal Lily's thunder. Once she and Leo were married, we could make our announcement. Slipping my hand into George's, I led him over to the cozy conversation area of a large tea table surrounded by a plump sofa and chairs, upholstered in blue and white print. We settled into one of the sofas. Just a little trouble with Leo and Lily's wedding plans, I said. Nothing so terrible, I suppose. He frowned, making 2 vertical lines appear between his brows. Please tell me it won't keep you from joining me at my brother's home next week. A romantic rendezvous requires the presence of both parties. I can't do it without you, you know. George was the youngest brother to the Earl of Hartfield, who was currently traveling on the continent with his wife, a second honeymoon of sorts. They set out on their trip a month ago and planned to continue their travels for another. As this was quite some time spent away from the estate, the Earl had asked George to check on Risings to ensure everything continued running smoothly. He agreed, of course, and would be leaving today for a stay of 2 weeks. And what would 2 autumn weeks in the country be without a shooting party? He'd asked me several times to join him, and I finally conceded, though with Lily's wedding coming on, I thought I could only spare a week. Actually, I said, this spot of trouble means I may be able to join you a bit sooner. His brow smoothed as he grinned. Have they decided to elope then? Wise choice. I shrugged. As it happens, it's their only choice. You're serious? He leaned back and took me in with a glance. Truly? After all their plans, they intend to elope? They must marry now. I gave him a meaningful look. He responded with a blank stare. They're marrying soon? Clearly, I needed to work on my facial expressions. No, I mean they must marry immediately. His raised brows told me he finally understood. Oh, isn't your mother on the way as we speak? She'll be terribly disappointed if she misses the wedding. As will Leo's mother, but we couldn't think of another option. I shrugged. As Leo's parents have no country home, there's nowhere to gather even a small family party. They could come to Risings, George said. Plenty of room there. That's lovely of you to author, but your brother is no relation to any of us. We cannot ask him to host a wedding, even a small one. It's far too much of an imposition. Correction. He held up his index finger. You are soon to be my brother's sister, a very close relation indeed. A second finger joined the first. He's not in residence, thus no imposition at all. And finally, his ring finger joined the others. I'm already hosting a shooting party, and another dozen people or so will make no difference. He gave me a nudge with his shoulder. Bring them to Risings. I bit my lip, hardly believing my good fortune, or Lily's good fortune as it were. Perhaps this could work after all. Risings was in Hampshire, not far at all. We could gather the immediate family quickly. My mother would arrive in just a few days, and she and Mrs. Kendrick could attend their children's wedding. This could work. A quick but proper wedding. No disappointed parents, and society none the wiser. I leaned my head against his shoulder, relieved to have a solution. Thank you, George. That would take care of everything. I was reminded of how much I loved him. Holding the wedding at Risings was the perfect solution. One small wedding to plan. How difficult could that be? So how difficult could that be? Just plan one small surprise wedding. Is that not adorable? Can you not picture that? Is that not just the most charming, adorable, wonderful, I'm looking for this cover again, charming, adorable, wonderful beginning of a story, delightful romp through Victorian times, and it is such fun. I'm trying to show you again to Facebook. Oh, Diane, forgive me, it is just not showing up here. Yes, someone is saying, oh, Jay Crows is saying, the possibilities. And you know, there's another fabulous book to come in this, as a result of this impromptu but necessary wedding. So we know that mayhem and mischief and murder are going to ensue in A Lady's Guide to Mischief and Murder by Dianne Freeman, which is available right now. Jen Jump is saying, now I have to look for a dress to wear to the wedding. Yes, we all should have worn hats today. Why didn't we think of it? Why didn't we think of it? So this will be posted on Facebook and Instagram. It'll be in the videos. It will be in IGTV. And Diane will come to Facebook, of course, and answer all of your questions. So ask her about research. Ask her about how she got into the Victorian era. Ask how she knows how people talked and what they did and all those rules of society that she weaves so seamlessly into this. And don't you love the voice of Frances? She is so marvelous, so droll, and so wry, and so knowing, and so self-aware. And she's been through a lot. The series of books is absolutely terrific, and I hope you really enjoy it. So come to Facebook and ask Diane questions, and she will be there to answer them all. So we thank Diane and we thank Kensington so much for letting us read the book today. Let me give you a tiny little preview. I love the hearts pouring out. Thank you, Glennie. Thank you, take the day off to read. And a hat, Hannah says, don't forget the hat. Different times, different problems, says Grace. You know, that is certainly a topic for a much longer discussion, isn't it? We certainly have problems of our own these days. But as I always say, it's always safe inside the pages of a book, and we are grateful for that. Now, safe, Trish is saying, what could go wrong is a clear signal that something, many things will. Yes, you know the shorthand of the first chapter, and that is lovely. That was A Lady's Guide to Mischief and Murder by Dianne Freeman. That was episode 63. Now 64, look at this. Lisa Unger's Confessions on the 745. This is her new book. No, that's wrong. That's wrong. That's not what we're reading. We're reading The Stranger Inside. Hank, this is reporter error. This is Lisa Unger's new book, Confessions on the 745. That'll be out later this year. But we are going to read from The Stranger Inside, her book that's out right now, highly acclaimed, The Stranger Inside, and we will be reading that on Tuesday. I will post a video where you'll see the real cover. We'll post her real cover. Again, reporter error. I want you to know about Lisa Unger's book, Confessions on the 745, because this is going to be a big deal, and we will be reading from this in a couple of months. But Tuesday, we will read from The Stranger Inside, much lauded, much awarded, much beloved, scary, scary, twisty, psychological thriller, as only a wonderful author like Lisa Unger can provide. She's great. If you haven't read Lisa Unger's books, they're thought-provoking and psychological and manipulative and completely surprising. So we will read The Stranger Inside from The Stranger Inside right here on Tuesday. I hope you're all well. I hope you're all doing fine. I hope you're all finding wonderful things to read and do. I hope you'll all be back to join us right here on First Chapter Fun coming up next Tuesday for Lisa Unger's The Stranger Inside. From Hannah Mary McKinnon and me till then, stay safe, stay kind, and have a wonderful day. See you soon.